What's going on, everyone? This is Dave from Penn's Ghost Paranormal. Today we're going to be going over the topic of Pennsylvania's one and only witch hunt and trial. It happened actually 10 years prior to the famous one in Salem, Massachusetts. Today we're going to go over some of the differences between how William Penn and his Quaker views differed from those of the Puritans up north, and how he handled things a lot different. That's coming up right after this. What's going on, everyone? This is Dave from Penn's Ghost Paranormal, and today we're going to be going over the Pennsylvania witch trials and how they differed from what happened up in Salem, Massachusetts. They happened 10 years before what happened in Salem. William Penn, who's on your screen right now, had a big influence in what happened in Pennsylvania. He was the proprietor of Pennsylvania at the time, the founder of Pennsylvania, and we're going to discuss how his Quaker views differed from those of the Puritans. Before I go into that, though, I want to plug some products here that I've been making. I've been busy during quarantine. This is a candle I'm making. It's called Adeline's Ghost. This is based off of a local legend here in Berks County. If you go to our YouTube channel, there's actually a video I did for Scary Storytime. I narrated a Scary Storytime video for her. We're not done with her story yet, though, so there's more to come. This one is called Werewolf. It's got a woodsy, musky, masculine kind of smell. I have one called Sepulchre by the Sea, which is based off of Edgar Allan Poe's Annabelle Lee. This is the latest one. It's part good, part bad, part nice, part naughty. It's got an angelic, nice top fragrance and a mischievous, dark type of spicy, leathery bottom. It's either going to be called Duality or Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know where I got the idea for that from. But today's story is going to be about the Pennsylvania witch trials and, well, like I said, William Penn's influence. To get started, we're going to first discuss what happened later, the Salem witch trials, and how some of the things that were different. In Salem, they would allow the spectral evidence to be submitted in their trials, and what that meant is some of the witches, some of the accused, not the witches, some of the afflicted would say that the witches came to them in their dreams, or came to them in the night, or sent a specter to them to torment them and curse them. This is permitted. They allowed this kind of stuff to be actual evidence. And some witches were, some of the accused, not witches, some of the accused were actually found guilty just because of that. Some other things they would try to do is they would dunk a witch until she either confessed or died. They would take a witch to, actually they didn't kill anybody like that, but they wanted them to confess. They would take them to a lake, and if they floated on top of the lake, they were a witch. If they sank to the bottom, they were not a witch. They had various different other tests. It just wasn't fair. I mean, none of what they did was fair. Ironically, there was over 200 people who were accused of witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts. Only 20 of them were executed. If you would have come out and you would have said, "Yes, I am a witch," they would have let you go. You would have lived. You might have been criticized or looked down upon in the village, but at least you were able to live. One thing that happened well, let's just start with who the witch in Pennsylvania was. Margaret Madsen and her husband Niels came to the United States from Sweden. They're Swedish immigrants. They made their home along Delaware River, Ridley Creek area. She was known as the Witch of Ridley Creek. So the early settlers there were from Sweden, and they got the nice fertile land that was along the Delaware River, the Ridley Creek, and so when the English started coming over, they had to get some land that was a little bit further inland. Wasn't so favorable for farming. They still made do, but it wasn't favorable. So a couple years go by, and some of the English settlers that came in tended to get a little bit jealous, and when Mr. Drystreet's cow started not producing milk, his only logical explanation was, well, it's got to be the witch of Ridley Creek. So she was a natural healer. She made herbs and all kinds of different things to heal people of their ailments. And so naturally, in those days, it was the witch's fault. So he brought the charges up in Philadelphia, and William Penn presided over it. He was the main judge. He called in a jury of a mixture of English and Swedish settlers to make it fair. He also would have everything publicized publicly, because he wanted Pennsylvanians to know what exactly was going on, because deep in his mind he knew that this was a sham. He knew that these other English settlers were jealous of our land, and he kind of had an idea what was going on. So he allowed her to defend herself, but since she was from Sweden, she didn't know the English language, so he actually would give her a translator. Which these things were unheard of. He was a very progressive person for his time. He was open to any religion, which is why witches and things like that, religions like that, were allowed in Pennsylvania. He just wanted people to come to what he called his green town, despite religion. He wanted you to come here and practice whatever faith you wanted to practice. And he would actually do away with the 10% church tax that England had on the colonies at that time. He would abolish the death penalty for everything but willful murder. So the death penalty was not on the case in this situation for Margaret. But as the trial went along, William Penn actually came out and asked Margaret, "Art thou a witch?" She said, "No, she's not a witch." And the next question he would ask would be, "Dost thou fly on a broomstick in the night?" And she had no idea what this meant. She had no idea. And William Penn would later on in the trial say, "I see no crime of it anyway." There's no crime of having the wherewithal to be a witch, having the people calling you a witch. So he went with the jury to deliberate. And through his wisdom, they were able to come up with with the idea that she was not guilty of witchcraft, but she was guilty of being known as a witch, which was a lesser. There was still a charge to witchcraft, but it wasn't anything serious. And this one in particular, her husband paid £50, and if she didn't practice witchcraft for 6 months, he got it returned to him. It was a peace offering that William Penn had in his courts. So as you can see, there was a big contrasting difference between the way William Penn handled the witchcraft trial and the way the Puritans in Massachusetts did. Ever since then, there were no other accusations of people being a witch, or at least tried for being a witch in Pennsylvania, until many, many years later. They didn't go on trial to be a witch, but something happened in York County, Pennsylvania. And I'm just going to cover this a little bit because it just goes along with the whole witching in Pennsylvania. In York, Pennsylvania, it's called Hex Hollow. Some people call it Ray Myers Hollow. It depends on who you are. There was a gentleman, John Blymeyer, who went to see a witch in Marietta, just outside of Lancaster. And this witch told him that Nelson Raymeyer had put a spell on him, and the only way that he could break the spell is by getting a lock of his hair and burying it. So he got 2 accomplices, which you can see all 3 accomplices on the screen right now. He got his friends, and they went to Mr. Raymeyer's house and were planning to get a lock of his hair. In doing so, Mr. Nelson Raymeyer defended himself against them, and they end up bludgeoning him to death. The story goes they tried to burn the body and burn the house, but were unsuccessful. Some people say it was because of the witchcraft or the voodoo that was on the house. What they found on his person, on the persons that killed him, was a book. It was this book here. It's called Long Lost Friend. It's a spell book I don't use it to cast spells. I use it for research. But it's a spell book that was actually written right close by to where I live in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's Mount Penn, Pennsylvania, in that vicinity where John Homan lived and wrote the book. But they found that book on them, which essentially made them suspects and ended up being tried for murder. So that's the story. We'll go into that one. That's an intriguing story by itself. We're going to go into that one a little bit deeper eventually. Maybe even visit the place. We can't really go in, and they don't really like visitors too much. But some place that I'd really like to show you all. And we'll go into the Salem witch trials as well. That's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more politics involved with that. It was a tragedy what happened up in Salem. It was a real tragedy of what happened to the poor people that were accused to be witches, and the ones who weren't witches. It was a tragedy. So this is the story of William Penn and Pennsylvania's one and only official witch trial. Hope to have more videos like this. Like I said, we're going to be working on the Hex Hollow video. I want to bring in some of our other team members to have little podcast style conversations and talk about some Pennsylvania haunts, some regional haunts, some of our cases that we go over, and anybody out there who wants to share their story. You don't have to necessarily talk to us. Just tell us your story, and we'll describe it on a video here. So we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to working with you. And until next time, happy haunting.